I'm gonna get into it.
Yeah, go for it.
Everybody's asking about this Dirac thing. I've been waiting a whole year, so I'm gonna go. Been waiting a year to talk about this Dirac active room treatment. So I'll answer these questions. So yeah, I've been trying it for the past year. I have it set up actually on a computer system. They provided, this interface for me, 8-channel interface, and I actually added to it. I've had it set up in my 20 by 20 garage setup. I have it here in this small, like 11 by 11 by 8-foot small office with a 7.1.4. Yeah, so 2 completely different spaces, and just totally different systems. And it's pretty crazy. The one thing I want to say is it works, right? It definitely works. And I also want to preface this by saying that they did come out to visit me to make sure that I had stuff set up properly. They they were here for 4 hours. I've talked to the senior engineer at Dirac, one of the senior engineers. I don't know how many they have, but does that mean you only have one? If you're the senior engineer, there are multiple senior engiers. I don't know how that works.
He's probably.
I don't work for.
There's probably other engineers.
Okay,
Junior, hell, maybe
sophomore and freshman. That's
there. It is. Well, however that works, I guess he's pretty high up.
He's got some rookie engineers under him.
So yeah, I've talked to them. The version that I have is probably not the final version. Yeah, because they were asking me to give them advice as to what my experience was, things like that. So I can't speak so much as far as, my experience, because it might not be the same as the final product, right? It's important to say that. Also, I don't know. I don't want people to think like I'm a little bit salty, but I was trying to pitch them my idea of how I thought, a way to improve room correction. That never happened. Actually, their advice to me was, why don't you try to do that on your own? And so that's kind of what I'm doing. So I don't want people to, I just want to get that all out there before I give my opinion, because, I'm a human, right? So we all have biases. If I try to get to my room correction, they say no, I'm like, that could affect things, and I'll leave it up to you guys to decide, what you guys think of that. And they were over here, so I consider I'm cool with them. So what can I say? What can I say about this? Number one, it works, right? So the idea is that, how do I simplify this? It's not a simple idea. It's a couple things. Think about how base management typically works right now, right? Typically, whichever speakers can't play a certain frequency, it passes it onto the subwoofers, and the subwoofers take over from there. Now it's like each speaker can support any other speaker, or each, so let's say if you have some floor standers in the front, they're not subwoofers, but they can still support maybe the smaller speakers. So base management wise, you can basically use any speaker, right? So let's say if you have
capable.
Yeah, and so Aaron would appreciate this because sometimes you might have a null in the response, and if you have 2 subwoofers, 4 subwoofers even, you may not be able to fill that null. But if you have all these speakers around you, your chances of being able to fill that are higher. And so it's able to do that. It's able to use any of your speakers to, fill any nulls that you may have in the bass response. So that's kind of crazy. In addition to all that, so that's a special kind of bass management that can use all your speakers. I've actually done this previously using the DDRC 88A, the mini DSP, where I was like, I wonder what happens if I use all the speakers as subs, kind of, right? So that's one aspect. But the other aspect is called active room treatment, meaning they're digitally correcting for early or late reflections, I guess you could say.
For Elan's room, basically.
Yeah, for Elan's
office.
and that's amazing that it works. It works. Now, I would say that mostly it's what you would expect. It does best at lower frequencies. So by default, I think they have it set to 150 hertz. So that's higher than most subs are set. And it works. And the interesting thing is that when you take care of the bass, it actually affects a lot of what you perceive in the higher frequencies. So it's not like it's doing. Let me rewind a little bit. They said so Smooth says they said in her interview it can go to 300. The version I have, I can go up to any frequency, pretty much. I'm pretty sure I can set it to any frequency I want. Yeah. So basically, you know how noise canceling works on headphones, right? You have
play like the inverse of what you're hearing,
exactly,
or what's going on.
Exactly. So it plays the inverse sound, and that cancels, right? And now you got noise reduction. So imagine that same exact effect, but for all of your speakers, right? So they're hearing the reflection. They're like, all right, that's an unwanted sound.
Mm-hmm.
Can we cancel that? And they can
mitigate that, or
yeah, it's kind of crazy because it does work. And the first time I set it up in the theater, it was almost uncomfortable, right? Imagine your room right now. Imagine Elan's room, right?
He's used to hearing it a certain way.
And all of a sudden you play some music and it sounds as if you have like treatment up. Your brain is like, how is that happening? How does that work? You know what I mean? So it's kind of crazy because it definitely works. My room, the effect that I would say is it sounded like I had treatment up, and the room kind of got smaller, right? Kind of like you can imagine how Aaron, how some people say, hey, you've said it before, I like the early reflection sometimes. It makes the soundstage sound wider. Technically, is that better? I don't know that it's technically better, but a lot of people believe that playback, it's pleasing to have the early reflection. Make it sound up. Yeah. So it's a good thing for playback. Now, accuracy wise, maybe if you're mastering and mixing and mastering, you don't want that. And that's kind of how it sounded. Like I wasn't hearing the early reflections and late reflections I'm used to hearing. And it was just like, my brain was like, what is going on here? I don't understand how it's working. Same thing in this room, but to a lesser extent, right? Because this room, I have some treatment up here. Mm-hmm. You know, I record here. Mm-hmm.
So SC Audio has a question. Is it a live always on mic setup?
No. It does. So here's the number one thing. You have to do a lot of measurements. So in my other room here, I have 13 speakers and 3 subs, right? So it has to do the number of measurements it has to do. So if you've ever run Dirac, it does all the speakers and then it does the first one again, right? So that's 17. It needs to do 17 locations, right? So one location does all the speakers. Second location, it does, takes a sweep of all the speakers. It has to do the number of speakers plus 1. So you can imagine how many that is, depending on the number of speakers you have. So it has to do, in my case, like 17 locations or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember if it has to do one for each sub or not, but it's a lot of measurements. So it only has to do it once, and then afterwards it's set. What else? Any questions about this so far? Because it's a lot. I imagine it's going to be years worth of testing this thing, so it's a lot to try to fit in.
Is this going to be integrated into Dirac Live, or is this going to be something completely different that you also have to purchase?
I think it's additional.
So, my understanding as of right now, like Storm Audio is the only one that has kind of like not the license for it, but they're going to have kind of access to it for almost a year before anybody else can actually implement it into their hardware.
Correct. Yeah, they're the launch partner.
Yeah. So they've kind of got the lockdown for a little while, and so we'll see it in Storm. Then they'll start rolling it out into probably whoever's willing to pay the licensing fee, I imagine.
Yeah.
Now, one question I have is, I don't think I've asked this of anybody yet, is I'm assuming that it probably won't be backward compatible with like current model, let's say for instance, if they don't roll this out until let's just say 2024, the Marantz models that just came out, Denon models, they're probably not. Oh no, they don't even have. Well, yeah, they do have Dirac. You can get that. I wonder if they're going to be able to utilize those, or if they've got to have like this new AVR with new hardware to support that software.
I think their official answer that I've seen was that it requires more processing power because they use more filters. That's the official answer.
Right.
My guess would be that it could be backwards compatible because, I'm running it on my, M1 Max computer. Yeah. This will smoke any of those AVRs as far as processing power. And I'll tell you right now, most of the power was in the initial calibration process. So it takes all the measurements, and now it has to crunch all those numbers and figure out what is the crossover for each speaker. Each speaker has its own individual crossover.
Yeah.
And, they support each. So this speaker can support that speaker at a certain frequency. Yeah. There's a limitation. All these different settings.
Cool.
And so I think once it's processed, though, I don't see why it couldn't possibly run on, my NAD T778 that only has Dirac Live.
Right.
I think it's possible. Would it be as high resolution? Maybe not, but I don't know. I can't see why it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Sure. And I did IT for 10 years as a business, so I have some idea how software works. And it's not like it's constantly dynamically changing things, right? You set it once and the setting is in that device and it's done. So most of the processing happens prior.
Are you Ron Popeeling us right now? Are we at set it and forget it? Is that?
Well, it's not. So that's my other thing that I want to say about this. As it stands right now, there's a lot of ways to mess it up. There's a lot of ways to get a bad sound from it, right? Example, if you set the support frequency where the speakers can support one another too high, then you may hear sounds from, let's say I'm playing a sound from the front right. Well, the other speakers are canceling, right? They're supposed to be canceling the reflections, but that could be coming from this speaker back here. If I set it too high, I can start to localize the sound that's supposed to cancel it. So you have to set that kind of low. The other thing is that it does, this is an issue with a lot of automatic corrections, is it's going to try to figure out what the lowest frequency each speaker can play. Okay, so it does that based on the main listening position. But if a speaker's in the corner, okay, you're getting some room gain. All right, so it thinks that that's how low it can play. Now, keep in mind, it's no longer using your AVR for bass management in the same sense where, okay, I'm setting 80 hertz. Don't play anything below 80 hertz on these speakers. No, it's not doing that because each speaker has its own crossover point, has its own kind of bass management for each speaker. And so what I found is sometimes it's set on my system, at least, it was set a little too low, right? Where, it's playing that frequency, but when I turn it up to reference, that speaker can't really play that low, so you hear the speaker distorting a little bit. You're like, I got to move that up manually, right? So that's something that I think that they should look at. And my basic advice was, they should make it magic, because my whole thing is magic beans. John, are you sleeping? Magic beans, right?
Tired.
No, I'm typing on my. I am tired. We've been doing a lot of stuff all day, and then I like another 4. I had to shovel the deck. I had to shovel the car.
I'm teasing you, bro. You can sleep.
No, I'm listening to you, but I'm also answering a comment.
That's all good. Yeah. So I guess my advice to them was make it a magic trick, right? My thing is called magical beans. Magic beans is basically, most people don't want to know how it works, right? These guys are math guys, and it's amazing that you can make this thing work. It's like mathematically, I'm like, it's crazy. This actually works, right? But for a normal user, they don't want to look at all those settings. It's just way too much and way too easy to mess things up. It's almost like it should be a button, on or off.
Yeah.
And when it's on, like, whoa, that's crazy.
Dude, let's call it the magic beans button. Just
That's all you need. That's what I told them. And then make an advanced section where you can mess stuff up, but that's on you. Once you go that route, that's on you. And the other thing I would like to say about it is, again, it's amazing that they're able to do this, right? But the question I have is, just because you can do something, should you do it?
Yeah,
that's a big question.
Treat the room. It almost seems like this is an effort to, definitely to help the guys that don't treat the room, and I think that's a good thing, but it's almost like, is that going to encourage people not to treat their room because they think that they can fix it with their auto correction?
Well, I guess what would be wrong if that was possible, right? If you didn't have to have big old room treatments around, to me, that's a good thing. Right, that would be a great thing to not have to do that stuff,
especially in like a living room situation where you're like,
I get it. I would love to be able to do that in my living room. That's for sure.
Now, the question is, should you do it though? Like theoretically, it's a great idea, right? But here's what I found:
with great power comes great responsibility. Just because you can, should you?
Here's my opinion. Okay, my personal opinion. Okay. Is that it's cool that it works, but it's like it my brain doesn't like it. My brain doesn't like it because if I'm into this movie, I have the lights off, I don't see the room at all. Cool. But the moment I hear somebody talk in the room and it has different acoustic properties than the sound that I'm hearing, or if I talk, or if something else makes a sound, my brain has a hard time switching between the two because it knows what the room is supposed to sound like.
Your brain is expecting something and it's getting something different.
Yes.
Makes sense.
But so I think there's certain use cases, right? So in this area, I'm making stuff for Atmos and it's like a mixing environment. I think it's appropriate for this situation, right? I don't know that it's appropriate for all situations, though. I think that's what I found. I think it's awesome that it'll work, and I think it's awesome for other things, actually. Like, I'll tell you the most impressive thing that it was able to do is I'm able to take any signal here, and I can make it a binaural signal. So I can play Atmos, and it'll turn it into, like, binaural. With Dirac ART, right? Because it's taking out the reflections of the room, I can play out of these two speakers here, and since it's canceling out the reflections, it sounds like I'm like
headphones
getting internalization, right? So it sounds like I'm wearing headphones. So in that particular case, it's very useful, right? To get binaural sound out of speakers, amazing. Now, the other question is, is the content that people are making, is it meant for not having any reflections, right? Or does the mixer, did he expect, hey, this is going to go into a normal room and we want a little bit of the side reflection? I don't know.
They're not. I don't think they're thinking that deep into how you're listening to the content. They're just trying to get the project done by the deadline date.
Like, let's just put it this way then. If you master for headphones, right? That's going to be different than if you master for speakers, right? If you take out the room, now it's becoming more like headphones, depending on how much of it you take out, right? So that's the thing that's interesting to me is we don't know how people are mixing and mastering these things, and we don't know what their expectations of the room are. So I think it's cool, but there are situations where I prefer it off. I just prefer hearing some reflections. And so I hope that they make it so it's just a slider, like intensity slider.
Dial it in.
How much you want to take out. So maybe that'll be a best one.
Is there Juan asks if there is a speaker minimum for it to work well?
Yeah, so the more full range your speakers are, the more they can assist with each other.
In that.
Yeah. So if you have speakers that can only go down to 80 hertz, they can't really help in the bass department, right? They can't assist each other because they just can't play that low. So the bigger the speakers, the more full range, the better. What else?
Cool.
I'll answer questions now. I'm pretty much done with my health.
Done with your thoughts.
Now, one thing that's interesting, Trendov actually sent out a press release this morning. So they have their own kind of acoustic, whatever you want to call it, optimizer that they just announced. I guess they had announced it at CES. They had a room, looks like 13.16.6 home cinema system set up.
Nice.
So,
Randall, so he says, do you know if there are a lot of patents with the new room correction software? I don't know. I don't look at their patents, but I do know that they had this kind of technology available for car audio for a long time.
mm-hmm.
They had it actually in the Volvo XC40, XC60, I think. Yeah, so it's been around for a while. I don't know what the patents are. Yeah, I don't know. What else? Mike Ortiz says, so will the Dirac Live room treatment be like third stage of level of Dirac? So yeah, you have Dirac Live, and then you have the 500 hertz cutoff version versus the full range version. You have Dirac Live bass control, and yeah, I guess this is the third level,
third thing,
active room treatment. Now, the thing to me that's kind of interesting is I don't know that you'd need the Dirac Live bass control
with that.
It's kind of like it takes that spot, in my in the software that I have here, I have the options of Dirac Live bass control, 2 options for that, and active room treatment. So yeah, and what's interesting is I can take all the measurements and switch between all of them, and they all sound kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, so Mike changed his story up. So does that mean he has 3 licenses to purchase? That's the question. I guess no, right?
Oh, do you have 3 licenses to purchase? I don't know. I don't know how all that works.
Is it pick one or the other, or can you buy all 3 and switch between?
I can't speak for them when it comes to the business part, because if it were me, I would want to make this available on as many systems as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, I know that it works on a computer because I'm using it on a computer, right?
Yeah.
Now, are they going to make it available on a computer? Probably not, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just using it for testing. But it is possible. How many people would want to buy that for a computer? I don't know. So I can't speak on their behalf when it comes to the business aspect. But it seems like I would want to sell as many licenses as possible. That'd be my game. But what can they're doing fine without me. So, what else? Any other questions about it? What's
all about that now?
Yeah, well, whether any other ones?
Not about Dirac. Yeah, other questions.
Aaron, what do you think about that? I was kind of curious because I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time. I don't talk to you guys about this internally. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, so I saw the picture and I thought, all right, that's cool. I kind of have a pretty good idea of what they were trying to do, but it's one of those things you feel like you probably just need to hear it to know it, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very curious about how it sounds when you effectively remove those reflections. And Randall was saying in the chat, and I was kind of commenting to him that I don't know how good of a thing it would be, because you're basically listening to a set of speakers in an open field, so there's no reflection. So it takes some of the naturalness away, right? Because your brain is built to interpret what the room shape is and the room size and things, based off of the reflection. So when you essentially remove that, I don't know, man. I think you said it best earlier. It's a trip, right?
It is a trip. It's like I know where my speakers are, but they weren't where my speakers are, which is a cool effect. If you're a hi-fi guy, like that's the whole point, is like, whoa, the sound is coming from somewhere I'm not used to it coming from.
Right.
It's almost too much at a certain point. It's almost like I'm amazed that it works. Number one, I'm amazed, but then I'm like, I don't know if I want that much. I want to dial it back. I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
so can you control like how much the effect is?
Like the intensity? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of like you can with Oro.
It's there's so many settings. I'm sure you can, but it's not like it's a slider. It's not a slider. It's
not as easy as that. Like what you were saying.
Yeah.
Let's do 20% of that.
How many what frequency do you want it to correct up to? And then you go to another speaker, how high do you want these other speakers to support this? It's just like, I'm telling you, got a pretty early version. So
we were talking about something similar in DTS with the DTS people when they're trying to do all these spatial audio mixes. All of a sudden, there's like a snare drum in your height channel, and people are like, "Wait a second, why is that there?" Like that, it's just so confusing to have something if you're like a hi-fi person, like the in the regular left-right stereo field. So I can imagine it's a trip.
This is interesting. So Larry says Polk SDA 800 crosstalk cancellation just emulated and leveled up. You know what?
Could be.
I found the SDA 800 sounded more natural.
Probably.
Yeah. It didn't hurt my brain as much.
I mean, those sounded cool. It sounded like the room had headphones on and I was just in the middle of the room. Like that. Those SDA sounded. Like
when Polk flew
cool.
me up to their headquarters a long time ago when they first announced that, I really enjoyed that for 2-channel. I thought it was a really cool experience because you could turn your head like this and the sound, it just sounded like it was still coming straight. It was the weirdest, trippiest thing to be able to do that. And the imaging did not change at all. But when it came to home theater, it was different. I don't know what it was about it.
They try to slap a center channel in there, and that just totally messes up the whole thing.
Maybe like that's what effect. It was, because I was like, I'm not sure I'm feeling this, But for 2-channel, I thought it was a cool, like that was definitely different. But you're right, it does sound different.
So FOMO says that maybe an AVR cheap processor may be too weak to do the calculations on board, and for the most part, your computer is the one that's going to do most of the calculations. When you run Dirac, usually they recommend you plug the microphone into your computer. Your computer's doing all the processing, and then it just sends it to the
downloads.
Yeah. It's just sending the settings. Yeah.
I don't care if you have, Trendov is like what, the top of the line, right? Trendov and Storm.
It's still not Mac Daddy processing.
If you compare that processor to what we were talking about earlier with the M1s and M2s, like not even close.
They're not putting that in there.
Come on. So yeah, it's just crazy to even compare those. So it's all kind of pre-rendered, I guess you could say. All the settings are pre-rendered. They calculate it prior, and then, and I can tell. How I can tell is because when I run a Dirac ART, it takes a long time for it to calculate all the settings, right? But when I have it running, I can see how much processing power it's taking. It's not very much, right? It's not working hard to keep it going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So. What else?
Real quick, super sticker from Sammy Debs. Thank you. And Sigmund. Thank you so much for the super chat. I'm 2 weeks away from the first sit down in my home theater / multi-purpose space. Thanks for all the advice and much success for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
I'd kill for like a couple hours alone with my home theater.
No, I think he's saying he's 2 weeks away from having his home theater.
Yeah, I know. Finished. So dude, I haven't been able to use my home theater. Is what I'm saying. I wish I had 2 hours to watch something, that isn't a stupid reality show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else? Any questions from you guys about this whole thing, or are we pretty much done with that? And that's it.
I mean, I wish just a comment.
Yeah.
Like what you were saying, like when you introduce noises that aren't supposed to be there, that's my only hesitation with something like active noise cancellation. Because I know when I'm listening to my AirPods with my active noise cancellation on, if I'm walking down the street or something and some weird ass sound is coming, it distorts the music that I'm listening to or podcast or whatever, because it's trying to cancel out that outside noise. So like in my case, it seems like a really good idea because I have no acoustic treatment in my living room currently. Mm-hmm. So it seems like the best of both worlds for those who, have wives or significant others who don't want acoustic treatment because they think it looks bad. Mm-hmm. So maybe Dirac is like heavily investing in the wife acceptance factor. But maybe like with my open concept living room, since my kitchen is back there, if my wife is cleaning dishes or something, I'm pretty sure that's going to distort what I'm actually hearing if I have active noise cancellation with this active room correction. Keep in mind,
it's not using a microphone to input any new signals.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
So you wouldn't have any. It's not like picking up
it's not live
signal.
Not live. Yeah.
So it wouldn't distort because of new sounds coming in. I can imagine that some sounds might throw it off, but these guys have the math down. You know what I mean? They probably mathed it all out and, figured all that. I haven't heard any weird sounds except for what I said earlier. If you set the speakers too low, then the speakers distort. Yeah. So that's about it. What else? And Michael, you were talking about like physical room treatment,
right?
And I think the one thing I can say about that is it's persistent though. Mm-hmm. Once you put those panels up, every sound that's made in that room also has that characteristic. Correct. It doesn't it doesn't change, right? So your brain says, "Hey, room treatment.
This is normal.
This is a new thing. You can't." There's no sound where it's not like that sound.
Yeah, when I walk in my theater room, your brain everybody knows. They're like, "Whoa, dude, I'm in a different spot." Mm-hmm. You walk from that hallway, which is Echo City, and then you make that right turn into the theater room. And it's like, okay. But then when you're in there, I mean, it's not like you're in an anechoic chamber where you're disoriented. It's like, this is just comfortable. Everything I say is very precise because you don't have all these echoes. You don't have this immediate direct sound, and then a fraction later you've got this reflected sound, and your brain is going, that's hard to understand. It's hard to interpret that and process that.
Yeah. So I think where this can probably do the most good is for bass, because bass traps are huge, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the higher frequencies, you can get like, some smaller panels, things like that for early reflections. You can treat that stuff pretty easily, and it's not super invasive, right? Mm-hmm. But bass, you guys know, the longer the wave, the bigger that bass trap has to be, the thicker. Yeah, and I mean, it starts to look pretty ridiculous.
And the reality is, you're not even going to be able to stop a 20 hertz bass wave, right, Aaron?
Yeah, there's no way.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like there's no acoustic panel
way,
that's going to stop that.
I mean, that stuff goes through walls.
Yeah, right. It's like, that's why when you're riding down the road, you don't hear the guy coming down. You don't hear his treble. You think, man, he's got a crappy system. All I hear is boom, 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 boom. That's got to be annoying, right? Well, it's not annoying to him because he's hearing mid-range and high frequencies and that bass. But, half a mile away, you're hearing this guy's subwoofers, man, because they're just, they're going through whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's the use case probably is for those lower frequencies. Mm-hmm. It's not like, nobody's voice is going that low. Yeah. And it's rare that you'll have sounds that make very low frequencies unless you're stomping on something, right?
Right. I don't know, man.
So
you sure it's
helpful.
You got Elon's voice, maybe.
Yeah, Elon. So it's helpful in those frequencies. Yeah. And I think maybe a combination of typical room treatment for the higher frequencies at your first reflection points, things like that.
Yeah.
I would say that's the use case for the, passive room treatment. And then for bass, I can see how this would be pretty awesome. So I also want to say thank you to Dirac for giving me the opportunity to test this. So I think that's super cool that they trusted me.
Sure, man.
To do these tests.
And we can vouch we didn't hear anything about it. So,
well, I mean,
speak for yourself, Mike.
$5 to say that.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I got paid. I ain't worried about it.
Everybody else knew about it and was talking about it. I couldn't say anything because sticking to my thing. So that's all I pretty much have about that. So make sure to join us every Monday for our live stream at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Daily HiFi.